So 7 years into working as the highest paid supermodel, having won the Adriana Lima contract,
what are you wearing?
they were scouted by Abercrombie and Fitch, Bruce Weber, to make $1 million a year by getting naked on a horse like Garrett Neff and have their own brand. That's all it was, referral-based nudes through a brothel to be raped and raped and raped through doctors who give them meds in order to become slave trade brands, to have people raped as employees, as managers in slave trade brands. But the real first 7 year, the real first 10 year with kids are international full-time supermodels who modeled out of New York, and they're the referral for the next 10. But if they couldn't, and they didn't have the 35 and the place to live, it's just that they're the first 10, and they're not compared to people who are paid off as stable jobs to be able to be a customer for any job. 10 years into them working. So they earned their own agency. So people lived away at college, they had their families pay for college, they worked part-time somewhere. But they weren't a party promoter for 25 or a prostitute. It's just that 10 years into working, it forces $150,000 surgery, but they didn't have it, so they died. It crushes their body and makes it so it forces a disability because they earned their own agency. But then 2012, they were replaced by all these prostitute employees who were LGBT rights slave trade brands to work minimum wage. But they actually did counseling through any religion and any religious group who were paid off by the OC housewives, the slave trade brands, who they worked for. And it's a mistake because they had to pay them like a church. And it's them as a referral for their anti-slave trade doctors who be paid in full. So they'd have 10 million as a one-year one out of LA and New York. They had to have the 100,000 a year every year when they don't have parents for the first 7 years, the first 10 years with kids. So I'd have a 20-year-old and they would never be paid. And they're just compared to a slave trade brand or a homeless person or a human trafficking victim when it's the entire economy and it's the healthcare. So it's just the fact that they have fire coming out of them like a prophet. And God slays their enemies. Because God controls everyone. And they would have to be paid as their own agency with their resume. And the direct booking through the brothel they rejected for all CEOs. And they would be paid and their customers. And that's the only way you pay or protect the entire world. That first 10-year agency to be the referral for the ones who survived when it recruited prostitutes who commuted, who became prostitutes from 4 hours away when their parents didn't understand the pay. Or homelessness when it's human trafficking. When they have the biggest network watching them, sending them on the Cassies. And no one comes in to follow them in. And they had to kill the slave trade to pay them every year, internationally. Britt Tranchino owns the agency for celebrity sales, but you have to pay the 15 with a referral for 15 for 10 sets of 10, and everyone she's worked with who is verified who's not a slave trade brand. And then they have to have 15 for the Ford Supermodel of the World, who won in the US 2004 underneath her, Monica, Ajuma, and then 2005 winners. Each year they held it in the US. And that's the referral for the Ford Supermodel of the World who modeled teens and 20s internationally, who won for their country, who modeled with 40-year-olds with kids and 80-year-old couples, who are model talent couples. They're more successful than the actors because they rejected the slave trade. They did the most amount of A-list campaigns, commercials, theatrical, and published selfies and YouTubes. She's the owner, and it's international. Secure the properties. They have to live out for low rent until it's an upgrade. With their social media agency online. The anti-slave trade social media agency online. Infinity, Premiere, and Option.
Option half. Option other states and countries. This is the international economy. From LA, New York International, being New York based for 21 years.